Welcome to our post show of the debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. As one of our senior editors, Asen, wrote, Kamala Harris came out, introduced herself, shook Donald Trump's hand, and just spent the rest of the evening doing permanent damage to him and his campaign. I thought that was very well said. I think from all aspects, really from the very beginning, Vice President Kamala Harris was out there prepared, confident, detailed, knew how to get under Donald Trump's skin. And I think she performed about just as good as I think people on her team hoped she would, and perhaps even exceeded the very high expectations, though I want to hear from the panel what they have to say. I think on the other hand, Donald Trump did just as much damage as one could do in a debate like this. He was awful. He was unprepared. For the first minute and a half, maybe he held it together. And then when full unhinged Donald Trump rally mode, he showed his support for authoritarians. He showed the name calling. He showed just his lack of any, just not being a normal human being, I guess is the way that I would phrase it. And so I've seen a lot of comments like this, and I'll just leave it like this. The American people got the debate they deserved, in my opinion, in 2024. I think this will go down as one of the most watched, if not the most watched debate in American history, and I certainly hope so. And I just believe, and why I'm happy beyond, I think, the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris crushed him, I'm a data geek. I'm all about admissible evidence, right? I'm about letting the jury see the admissible evidence, or in this case, the American people, and to another extent, the world, but the American voters see the contrast and make an informed decision. I think after this debate, the American people can make an informed decision using data about these candidates and the differences and contrast that is there. I think we can be critical of certain points, of course, that, I thought the moderators by and large did a good job. There were points where they cut her off, but let Donald Trump ramble, and I think we can be a little, but I think overall they did a much better job than CNN in fact checking, and letting, the true facts come out. But they let, the candidates, speak relatively freely. For Donald Trump, that means lie after lie after lie. And she was tethered to reality. There was even an example where they allowed Donald Trump to take the frame of climate change, which Vice President Kamala Harris correctly pointed out. Donald Trump doesn't believe climate change is real, and they let him kind of spew lies versus just ask him the basic question, do you view that it's a hoax? But even if you look right now on Fox, I mean, people like Brit Hume and others are saying, make no mistake about it, Trump had a bad night. This was her night. We have that clip from moments ago. This is what they're saying on Fox right now. In case people are interested, let's play that clip.
Now, look, make no mistake about it. Trump had a bad night. He rose to the bait repeatedly when she baited him, something I'm sure his advisors had begged him not to do. In the first debate when Biden attacked him, he just kept his cool and kept going. In this debate, he rose to debating, and we heard so many of the old grievances that we'd long thought that Trump had learned were not winners politically. Mm-hmm. And there they all were, talking about how he didn't lose the election and all that. I mean, my sense is that she came out of this in pretty good shape. Now, how long this will last and is anybody's guess. But for tonight, at least, this was pretty much her night.
You're saying she had a good night?
I'm saying she certainly did.
Sean Hannity is in this.
They were so upset to hear that, right, Ben? And you hear there, and it's funny because they have this vision of Donald Trump that they try to present, right? And when there are these unedited, unfiltered moments, you actually they have a difficulty with the propaganda. They could cut away from his rallies and then sane wash what he's saying. They could take little clips and try to make it seem like he's a little coherent when he's completely incoherent. But tonight, when you see him unfiltered, unedited, there is no denying who Donald Trump is. And you even see Brit Hume there kind of wish casting of a person who he wants Donald Trump to be. Oh, I thought he learned. I actually thought he had learned all these things that they weren't good to talk about. What are you talking about? He's been speaking about these things all the time. Now you're going to see the networks, the more partisan Fox hosts, you're going to see them attack ABC. They're going to be furious. That's going to be their way of coping with the debate loss. We're already seeing the right-wing ecosystem attacking the moderators, attacking the network. But Donald Trump, honestly, did this to himself in so many ways. His answers were incoherent. He could not tell the truth. He could not answer a question straight. And the questions that he had answers for, he had the wrong answers for, quite frankly. Like when he refused to say who he would pick in a battle in the war between Ukraine and Russia. He refused. That non-answer was a huge answer in and of itself. It tells the American people everything you want.
Three times, Brett. Three times he wouldn't do it.
When he was pressed with the abortion issue and said, would you sign a national abortion ban if you went to your desk? He refused to answer that question. Now we're getting breaking news that the Harris-Walz campaign is calling for another debate. They are challenging Donald Trump to another debate right now. They want another smackdown. Let's see if Donald Trump tucks his tail between his legs and runs away. I want to bring in our panel because we have two incredible guests for you today. We have Anthony Davis, our esteemed host who does so many shows here on the MeidasTouch Network. And if you're not subscribed to these podcasts, if you do not watch these shows on the MeidasTouch Network, I hope you give him a shot. Anthony Davis does 5-minute news, which is exactly what it sounds like, folks. 5 minutes of daily news every single day. Just the facts, just the straight news. Make sure you subscribe to 5-minute news. Every weekend on Sundays, you could catch Anthony on The Weekend Show, where he has incredible guests, incredible conversations, thought-provoking, truly an incredible show. And every Wednesday, Anthony hosts a show with our editor-in-chief, Ron Filipkowski, called Uncovered, where they dig into the underbelly of MAGA. We also have, of course, the fan favorite, Michael Popak, national trial attorney and host of your favorite Legal AF. First, let's bring in Anthony. Anthony, first impressions after watching that debate.
Well, it's proof, Brett, that you can't really debate somebody who is so mentally unhealthy as Donald Trump. And his frailty, I think his narcissism was on full display, but this personality disorder that we always talk about, I think he gets shielded from a lot of the stuff. And Kamala Harris just gave it to him. And he doesn't really get told to his face enough quite what a terrible person he is, how he's ruined the country, and she really didn't hold back in that regard. So it was very nice to watch him squirm. I noticed a very elaborate comb over, which was so I couldn't take my eyes off of that thing. It was like magic. But ultimately, what we saw was the difference between the America of the future and the America of the past. And I think that her phrase, "We're not going back," she kept going back to that, and I was very pleased that she did. She goaded him. She highlighted his insecurities and inadequacies. I love the fact when he responded to the crowd size issue and the fact that she said, people leave your rallies because they're bored. I mean, you could see him, like, physically, he could not handle that because he's shielded from this type of data. And so it was just great to kind of see him hung out to dry in that way. I was a little frustrated at times because I felt that Donald Trump was using his white male privilege to get the vision mixer to cut to him. And even though they said mics would be muted, of course, whenever Donald Trump spoke when he wasn't supposed to, they turned his mic on. And they didn't do that with Kamala Harris. And if I was training her, I would have said, you control the studio gallery. If you start talking, they'll cut to you. And if you start talking, they'll turn your mic on. And Trump knows that. And so he played the studio system. And I found that very frustrating because if you add up the time, I'm sure Trump got more airtime than Kamala Harris did.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thank you for the insights, Anthony. And I could not agree more with everything you said. Michael Popak, your immediate thoughts after this debate.
Yeah, I want to take it from Kamala's standpoint. We've done a lot of talking about how poorly Donald Trump did. And that is also because it stands in stark contrast to a masterful performance by the person who's going to end up in the Oval Office. She had things that she needed to accomplish, and she checked every one of those boxes. I wrote down as she was performing, and I'm evaluating her not just at the intersection of law and politics and as a fellow lawyer and of her vintage, but I'm doing it from a debater. I'm doing it from, is she making her closing argument? Is she coherent? Is she eloquent? Is she confident? Is she smooth? And is she making her point to the American people to answer a question that she had going into this debate? 70%, if you believe the polls, 70% of the American people did not know enough about Kamala Harris, despite her record, her body of work, and her being vice president. As we all know, it's very hard to get noticed as being the vice president of the United States, unless you're like Mike Pence, where you're trying to get where he's almost hanged by the outgoing president. Otherwise, vice presidents do a dutiful, loyal job of being sort of, golden retriever in chief in helping the president accomplish all of their tasks. Now she needs to answer to the American people, 70% of which said they need to have a better formed opinion about her. By contrast, 90% of the American people said, we know enough about Donald Trump. So that was what she went in there with. And what I wrote immediately was eloquent, confident, smooth, coherent. First 10 minutes, I thought she was finding her way. I thought she wasn't counterpunching as quickly as she could have, and she wasn't answering directly David Muir's question. By the 14th minute on, she completely dominated that debate in every rhetorical way and every demonstration of leadership and power and thoughtfulness. I've got people around me in my life, they're not close friends, who make comments about her intelligence to me, who say she's not smart, something about the bar, buying all the talking points for MAGA. No one who have watched that, no one for 2 hours watching that debate who is being independent and making that evaluation for themselves can say anything other than she not only won the debate from a debate standpoint, like if we were in high school, but she won the argument, the closing argument to the American people, demonstrating that she can be and will be an effective commander-in-chief. She's somebody who has a command of facts, who has command of domestic policy, who stands in stark contrast to Donald Trump's continued trashing of the rule of law in our constitutional republic. Her facility, how facile she was in drawing upon facts to counter his, I made a joke within our text message, who had eating dogs at the 30-minute mark in the pool, in the dead pool for Donald Trump. All right. So he's off with cats and dogs getting eaten with this bullshit story while she's saying 200 of this and your Secretary of State and your Attorney General and your this. And let's talk about fracking. I was also thinking at one point, I am very glad that the Democrats have chosen Kamala Harris. I'm not sure how that debate would have went if Joe Biden was there. And it just shows, to wrap it up for my point, Britt Hume's commentary is also because Donald Trump never could be prepared for Kamala Harris because he bought into all the memes that she can't put a sentence together, that she cackles at the wrong moments, that she's not presidential, that she hasn't accomplished anything. He bought everything that his advisors have been selling him. And all of his last attempts to distance himself. Let's just talk about abortion for 1 minute. For him to stand there.
Can I cut in with one big breaking news update? Because I want to make sure the Midas Mighty hears this first from us. Taylor Swift has officially endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris in a very, very powerful statement, pushing back strongly against Donald Trump. And I want to read this to everybody. And soon we're going to bring in Dina Dahl, our legal analyst here at the MeidasTouch Network, to discuss this. I want to get Dina's thoughts on this because this is quite the statement from Taylor Swift endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris. She says, like many of you, I watched the debate tonight. If you haven't already, now is a great time to do your research on the issues at hand and the stances these candidates take on the topics that matter to you the most. As a voter, I make sure to watch and read everything I can about their proposed policies and plans for this country. Recently, I was made aware that AI of, quote, me falsely endorsing Donald Trump's presidential run was posted to his site. It really conjured up my fears around AI and the dangers of spreading misinformation. It brought me to the conclusion that I need to be very transparent about my actual plans this election as a voter. The simplest way to combat misinformation is with the truth. And here it comes, folks. I will be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the 2024 presidential election. I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them. I think she is a steady-handed, gifted leader, and I believe we could accomplish so much more in this country if we are led by calm and not chaos. I was so heartened and impressed by her selection of her running mate Tim Walz, who has been standing up for LGBTQ plus rights, IVF, and a woman's right to choose her own body for decades. I've done my research and I've made my choice. Your research is all yours to do, and the choice is yours to make. I also want to say, especially to first-time voters, remember that in order to vote, you have to be registered. I also find it's much easier to vote early. I'll link where to register and find early voting dates and info in my story. With love and hope, Taylor Swift, childless cat lady. And as you all know here at the MeidasTouch Network, the person who discovered the initial childless cat lady clip that Taylor Swift just referenced was MeidasTouch editor-in-chief Ron Filipkowski, who brought that to the forefront and made that a national issue. Now I would like to bring in Dina Dahl to the panel, MeidasTouch Network legal analyst. Dina, I got to get your initial thoughts.
Before turning it over to Dina, though, I'm going to go and do a hot take that I need to do, recapping the Taylor Swift news, recapping the debate. So you will all see my recap pop up on our YouTube channel very soon. And before tossing it to Dina, though, I just want to make one plug. Brett, you mentioned that it was our editorial team that dug up the clip on childless cat lady, and that's thanks to everybody's contribution at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. And this evening, we did something I think very different, and it really worked out well. We did a live stream of the debate on our Patreon, where you and I were on the screen the entire time. So for those just joining, we don't have any outside investors here at the MeidasTouch Network at all. There's 81,000 people watching this. We're like one of the most watched YouTube channels right now, and about 20 to 30 million people watch this channel every 48 hours. That's more than Fox. That's more than CNN. That's more than MSNBC. In going forward, it's time that we reclaim the narrative of being unapologetically pro-democracy. And together, we need to build an entirely new media platform that's focused on our democracy, that does not both sides the issues. And so we grow here through those emojis that you see in the chat. We have pro-democracy sponsors and our Patreon. Also, there's store.MeidasTouch.com to get all the MeidasTouch gear. Patreon.com/MeidasTouch. One more time, Patreon.com/MeidasTouch. And I say that because I want to keep on growing this thing together. Dina, sorry to interject. I'm going to toss it to you, but I wanted to make that plug because otherwise Jordy would be very upset at me.
Dina, welcome.
It's always great listening to you, Ben. So yeah, a major endorsement and well-timed. I mean, she is the true businesswoman, right? Trump always claims he is, but she truly is. And it's not a coincidence that she did it after such a powerful debate, because people have to earn their votes. And Vice President Harris clearly showed that she was earning people's votes. And I think that's what Taylor Swift was reacting to. What a success and what a message, how clear she was about what kind of president she would be. And also how clear she was in her answer regarding reproductive rights. I thought that was maybe one of the best answers Vice President Harris gave all night. It was, you could tell it was emotional. And this idea that what it actually means when they say it should be states' rights. It is that woman who has 2 jobs having to get on a plane with a stranger to go do it. And that's reality. And speaking, that is why so many people in this country believe in that freedom, as is Taylor Swift, as she mentioned in that endorsement. So I think Vice President Harris clearly winning the debate, showing why people should vote for her, doing it so well. That's why Taylor Swift chose that moment to endorse, because she had earned at that point the endorsement.
A powerful moment, a well-earned endorsement by Vice President Kamala Harris, and a really powerful statement, I thought, by Taylor Swift. I want to tell all the viewers here also to make sure that you go ahead and, no matter what podcast app you use, remember to subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast. The MeidasTouch podcast, we do daily hot takes throughout the day. You get all your breaking news at the MeidasTouch podcast. It is free to add the show, whether you use Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Also, remember to give it a 5-star review. That would be much appreciated. And it helps because pro-democracy has been under attack. I'm sure a lot of you saw the MeidasTouch TikTok account was banned over the weekend because MAGA trolls took us down by mass reporting us. We got it back up thanks to you. But that's why it's important that we need to fight back, and we need to all be coalescing around these various platforms, whether it's the MeidasTouch podcast, our TikTok, Instagram, wherever. We need to be getting our message out entirely. Dina, moving on from Taylor Swift, which is, of course, historic news, what were your first impressions of seeing Vice President Kamala Harris up there tonight at the debate, going toe-to-toe with Donald Trump in this historic moment?
I mean, I think the biggest overarching takeaway was that she had so many specific details in her answers. Like, even when she was talking about her economic plan, she referenced Goldman Sachs and the Wharton Business School, the specific number of Nobel laureates who had endorsed her plan. The level of detail in her answer, this was her moment, not only to debate Donald Trump, but to introduce herself to a lot of Americans who are maybe not like this community, not as clued in, haven't heard from her or seen from her before. I think she did such a good job completely dispelling any notion that she was not qualified or informed enough to do the job. Her level of detail was so impressive, to be quite honest, so impressive. And the delivery of it sounding so unrehearsed. It sounded very unrehearsed in her command of the facts. And then you had Donald Trump, who, we've seen him over the years. And like she said, it's like a tired shtick. It's become really obvious, although I'm sure he was always like this, how much he speaks in generalities and really says nothing. The number of answers that he gave that was like, the people I'm going to talk to, and we're going to raise it by 400. And it was all a lot of like general statements. And even if you were an undecided voter, even if you may like a lot of his policies, like, I don't think anything he said would have been that helpful because they were so general. You had no idea. Like, his answer, I think a perfect example of this was his answer to the question about, will you actually repeal Obamacare and replace it? And,
Right.
And he really said, I have concepts of an idea. You're running for the president of the United States, and you're a month and a half out. It's like the first time he has thought of this. He clearly doesn't care. He needs to borrow Melania's "I don't care" jacket because he clearly doesn't care about the American people and the issues. It was like the first time he had thought about healthcare. And we will come up with something. You'll see it soon. So lots of generalities on his part, lots of specifics on her part. And hopefully for that undecided voter, you got an idea of what they were each going to be like. Trump, probably a lot of nothing because that's what he was saying, and her, some concrete ideas. So that was kind of my overarching idea of both of them.
I think you make some great points, Dina, and especially, when it came to that healthcare answer, healthcare was certainly front and center as we watched this debate tonight. Of course, Donald Trump's lack of a plan, and Donald Trump, quite frankly, his attacks on healthcare, in particular women's healthcare. And Michael Popak, I know you were discussing this issue before. I know I had to cut you off before, but what were your thoughts on Donald Trump's answers and the way Vice President Harris handled the topic of healthcare and reproductive healthcare specifically.
Well, let me touch on Taylor Swift for a minute. Taylor Swift making that endorsement so smartly after the debate is very reminiscent of how, frankly, Oprah put Barack Obama over the top. The Oprah, I mean, they after the fact, political historians and election historians figured out that at the time, Oprah, who was a notorious independent, as she said when she hit the elections, the debates, the national stage for the Democratic National Convention, she was then too, that she was good for 3 million extra votes for Obama. And think about this, 40,000 votes in seven battleground states decided the last election. So we'll have to see what the Taylor Swift effect is going to be on her voting age people. We're not talking about the under 12-year-olds. We need the parents and the 18 and over to be impacted by.
Well, let me tell you, let me tell you as a Swiftie myself, Michael Popak, that the Swifties are not just 12-year-olds, I have to say. And I would argue that the Taylor Swift audience is actually more of a millennial audience, who's now an older audience, who has grown up with her and are now very much of voting age, my age and older. And so I think Taylor Swift actually does have a strong mobilized group of voters. We saw this with the Swifties for Trump call the other day. And we see that every time also Taylor Swift, just as she did tonight, posting links to register to vote. Her fan base, they listen to her, they go, they vote. And I think it was so just an interesting thing to see that she pointed out the AI aspect of it all, because when I saw Donald Trump do that, I immediately thought that's going to backfire in a big way. Like, you do not mess with you do not mess with any human being like that. You certainly do not mess with Taylor Swift like that, and you certainly do not mess with her fan base like that by posting a phony endorsement. Like, what the hell do you think is going to happen when you do that? And she struck back, and she struck back with a vengeance, and did it at such a powerful moment that probably had perhaps the most impact of any night imaginable, seeing that and seeing her statement.
So what should happen then, if based on that, the millennials should do what the Oprah voters did and help put Kamala over the top? And it sounds like, based on that analysis, that they will. Let me just talk about abortion, because that was really the biggest issue for me for the night, to show the contrast between these two individuals. You've got Donald Trump lying to the American people that everyone, and I wrote it down, he said all law professors, all judges, all Democrats, all Republicans wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade, take away a constitutional right of a woman to choose that had been enshrined for 50 years plus, and turn it over to the states because it was dividing this country. That is a complete and absolute lie. Everybody in this network knows that, and hopefully the independent voter knows that as well. Nobody thought it was a good idea to divide this country in a way that we did during the Civil War, to make red and blue states where women are second-class citizens in red states that are criminalized along with the people in their lives if they try to exercise bodily autonomy. And the fact that that was his best argument, that he did a courageous thing, and so did his Supreme Court justices, to rip away a woman's right to choose, is what he's going. That is on the ballot. That is literally on the ballot in some of the battleground states, in state constitutional amendments to enshrine that right in their states. He made a nonsensical argument about what he would do about a national ban, and versus what Kamala Harris will do when she's in office, to ensure that if the Supreme Court doesn't find a constitutional right, that it end up with a federal law. He just said that's nonsense because she'll never get the votes. He's not properly speaking to the American voter, the woman voter, the person that supports the woman voter in America, to restore her to first-class citizenship. And for me, that was the most compelling argument that she made tonight. I thought she did everything else she needed to do, including what Anthony said earlier, which is to trigger Donald Trump. He took the bait, as Britt Hume said, time and time again, because He wasn't prepared. He wasn't prepared to debate her. He wanted to debate Joe Biden. That didn't happen. He's known that for almost a month and a half to 2 months now. And yet still that contrast was so stark. So finally, she did exactly what she needed to do to answer to the 70% of the American people who said they don't have a clear image of what she would be like as president. Now they do.
Exactly. And, hearing Vice President Harris call that out, you're not debating Joe Biden, you're debating me, pointing that out to people. And quite frankly, Donald Trump didn't know how to handle it. He was still stuck in this rut.
He hadn't done any prep. I mean, it was pretty clear that she had spent the last few days really working on this. And
Anthony, he was with Laura
seriously.
Loomer and Matt Gaetz and that whole crew.
But we know he doesn't listen to anybody. He might have said, okay, this meeting is a prep meeting and invited them in and they had some snacks. But there's absolutely no way that they said stuff that he was going to ingest and therefore present on the night. He was completely unprepared. So he relied on the old tropes from the rallies, the stuff that we knew. So most of us predicted exactly what Donald Trump was going to say. And he did exactly what we had predicted. So that was great. There was a few times he was walking on the cracks of the pavement as opposed to on the paving stones themselves. And I thought that was interesting, where he was giving away quite how little knowledge he has about the way the world works, about American policy, about NATO, and his constant references of, well, Viktor Orban said that I was great. Viktor Orban said that everything that I had come up with was brilliant. And I had wished that Kamala Harris had said, you do know that Viktor Orban is like one of the worst leaders on the planet and considered to be the type of dictator that you associate with regarding Russia, North Korea, and China. So it's just very interesting that we had a little window on Donald Trump's world outside of rally Trump and outside of interview Trump. We got a few more bits of the kind of crazy cogs inside that small brain. I wish he'd have said unhinged. I wanted to hear more about his insanity because, and at one point, and tell me if I'm wrong, panel, please, but I was hoping she was going to do this. whenever it cut to her, because you have to
Anthony,
learn to use the camera.
How about when he said it? Well, I wrote it down because I had to write it down. At one point, he said that the Biden-Harris administration was taking people out of insane asylums and out of jails and giving them jobs that would have went to black and brown people. He literally said that during the debate.
He also said they were doing transgender operations
on prisoners.
And what about eating cats and dogs? I mean, should we not mention that one? Because
we got to mention that one. And that, to me, is the perfect example of, like you said, Anthony, Donald Trump taking the bait.
Yeah.
This was a conspiracy theory that was spouted in the MAGA ecosystem. And it's one of those other examples of them getting high on their own supply, so to speak, where they spread this lie. It gets thoroughly debunked. But Donald Trump, like I was joking about, but I was serious about before, Donald Trump was spending his time on the plane with conspiracy theorists like Laura Loomer leading up to this debate, somebody who was spreading this very lie. Donald Trump spouts this lie about something that is not in fact happening at all in Springfield, Ohio, or anywhere, about Haitian immigrants eating people's pets, not happening. Donald Trump appears, because he is, to be a complete unhinged lunatic, shouting about immigrants eating cats and dogs, just totally looking like a xenophobic bigot who has no grasp on reality. I saw Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that congresswoman, she said something along the lines of, he's like a guy, ranting on the corner of 32nd Street, in New York. And that's really what he came out with. There were all these reports beforehand that the Trump campaign was hoping that Donald Trump would be happy Trump tonight. They didn't want to see sad or angry Trump. They wanted to see happy Trump. Well, I think their worst fears came true tonight at this debate, watching this. And you could see it by the level of cope that you see in the coverage right now. I mean, Sean Hannity is absolutely melting down. You see all the hosts on Fox absolutely melting down. Michael Popok just had to cut out. It was great having him on the show. I want to show you Tim Walz's reaction to the Taylor Swift news. Let's play that clip right now.
I was so heartened and impressed by her selection of running mate Tim Walz, who has been standing up for LGBTQ+ rights, IVF, and a woman's right to her own body for decades. I've done my research and I've made my choice. Your research is all yours to do, and the choice is yours to make. I also want to say, especially to first-time voters, remember that in order to vote, you have to be registered. I also find it's much easier to vote early. I will link where to register and find early voting dates and info in my story. With love and hope, Taylor Swift, signed Childless Cat Lady. I have to get your response to that, Mr. Governor.
All those things, I am incredibly grateful, first of all, to Taylor Swift. I say that also as a cat owner, a fellow cat owner. Look, Swifties, you heard it. We know that it's there. That was eloquent, and it was clear. And that's the type of courage we need in America to stand up. We've seen it out of those Republicans who were at the DNC. We've seen it out of women who would like to have their own personal lives kept personal, but are forced to go out there because they nearly died because they can't get abortion services in a pregnancy. And now you have somebody like Taylor Swift coming out, making that very clear. This would be the opportunity, Swifties. KamalaHarris.com. Get on over there. Give us a hand. Get things going.
Well said by Governor Walz. And just to show you the trajectory of this whole childless cat lady thing, for the folks who may be watching MeidasTouch Network for the first time, I want to remind you again where this all came from. When Donald Trump chose J.D. Vance as his running mate, we here at the MeidasTouch Network were a little shocked. I mean, not shocked that Donald Trump would make a bad decision, but amazed that he would make such a bad decision, because we have a lot of footage on a whole lot of people. And when Donald Trump picked Vance, we were like, wow, he is actually a weirdo and a creep. And this is perhaps one of the worst choices ever made for vice president. And so almost immediately after J.D. Vance was selected, our editor-in-chief here, Ron Filipkowski, who has a show with Anthony Davis every Wednesday here on the MeidasTouch Network called Uncovered. Make sure you check it out and subscribe to that podcast. Ron Filipkowski posted the clip of J.D. Vance speaking with Tucker Carlson about childless cat ladies that took the internet by storm, went mega viral, and set off this entire idea of the childless cat lady, and linking it to J.D. Vance. And I think you all know how viral this has become, that it's went from the MeidasTouch Network now to Taylor Swift. And it shows quite the reach, and we cannot do that without all of you here at the MeidasTouch Network who are watching us. Thank you. And to support our work, by the way, you can support us at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Become a member. It really helps us to continue to put on these shows. We also do monthly Q&As. This Thursday, we're doing one where you can meet me and my brothers. It's going to be a fun time. We did a watch party tonight with the debate on Patreon. That was a good time. We do after shows. And make sure that you go right now. I want you all to add the MeidasTouch podcast. Add it on any app that you have. Leave a 5-star review. I want to read, we have a statement, I believe, from the Harris-Walz campaign. Apologies. And here's a statement from the Harris-Walz campaign chair, Jen O'Malley Dillon, on the debate. She says, tonight, Vice President Harris commanded the stage on every single issue that matters to the American people. Americans saw exactly what kind of president Kamala Harris will be, one who offers a new way forward for the country, who will be a president for all Americans, and who will turn the page once and for all on the darkness and division of Donald Trump. And she reminded the American people that she is the only candidate in this race to serve, ready to serve as our next commander-in-chief. Donald Trump was totally incoherent. He was angry and rattled, and it all began when Vice President Harris held him accountable for his record overturning Roe v. Wade and harming women nationwide. Trump refused to say he would veto a national abortion ban. He again said he had no regrets over January 6th. And in case you missed it, through the countless lies he rattled off on stage tonight, Trump offered zero plan for the everyday needs of Americans, saying only he had, quote, concepts of a plan. That's because the only actual plan Trump has is Project 2025, which would raise costs for the middle class and take America backwards. Under the bright lights, the American people got to see the choice they will face this fall at the ballot box between moving forward with Kamala Harris or going backwards with Trump. That's what they saw tonight and what they should see at a second debate in October. Vice President Harris is ready for a second debate. Is Donald Trump. There you have the Harris-Walz campaign throwing down the gauntlet for a second debate. Sorry to block your face there, Dina, for a moment with that graphic, but Didn't need to do that, but we do have the childless cat lady merch over at store.MeidasTouch.com. We can put it up now. We won't be blocking Dina now. There it is, the childless cat lady merch. You could get yours at store.MeidasTouch.com. We have a whole other host of amazing pro-democracy merch at store.MeidasTouch.com. We have the Kamala Brat summer shirts. We have in the spirit of Taylor Swift. If I
think we lost.
You still got me. I think I might have froze for a second.
You froze.
Okay.
You got caught in the Wi-Fi zone.
I got caught in the Wi-Fi zone, but we have all
zone.
this great merch at store.MeidasTouch.com. In the spirit of Taylor Swift, we also have sort of like those friendship bracelets that you pass out at different events and things. We got the We're Not Going Back. We got the Mind Your Own Damn Business tees with Tim Walz. And speaking of Tim Walz, I hear that Tim Walz was just ripping Donald Trump as well in one of his post-debate interviews. If we have that clip, let's play that.
Folks like my mom, who's been a poll watcher for years, folks that are on the Republican, Democrats, independents, who do the hard work of democracy for no money, they're being put at risk by the recklessness of Donald Trump, because he can't, at nearly 80 years old, do something that my fourth graders, when I taught them, did. When you lose a game, you go shake hands and you congratulate the other person and you move on. We're in this together. This guy cares nothing about the democracy. He cares nothing about the American people. He cares about himself and himself only. So it empowers Putin. It empowers dictators. But again, one example, he was asked for one world leader who was with him, and it's Orban. My God, that's all you need to know. You've got a leader in Kamala Harris that understands the importance of these alliances. She understands what it truly means to stand up for the Western democracies, and she truly means to talk about others. Donald Trump talked about himself 99% of the time, and if he wasn't talking about that, he was talking about Orban. So it was couldn't have been clearer. Couldn't have been clearer. And I'd just like to say, if I can make my plug, she did her job. Americans need to do theirs. Get engaged. Get the facts. Go to KamalaHarris.com. Go down and do some door knocking. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to your relatives. It was clear tonight that there is only one person on that stage that should be president of the United States, and that was Kamala Harris.
Anthony, it was like he was just listening to you here on the show, huh?
I really like that guy. You know, isn't it funny that none of us really knew anything about him just a few weeks ago, and now he's been catapulted into the center of kind of the world's news. The thing I found most interesting was because, you know, I'm obsessed with the mental health aspect and the psychological aspect of Donald Trump. And do you remember when Kamala Harris said, you know, I grew up in a middle class family. I wasn't given $400 million by my father and then had 6 bankruptcies. And again, I don't think anybody's really said this to Donald Trump directly before, and you could watch him, you know, physically shrivel a little more like a tangerine with a wig on. And he was so insulted by that. And it was the personal things that he really can't handle. So it was that plus the references to people leaving his rallies because they're bored, that's all he really wanted to talk about. And given enough rope, he probably would have just talked about crowd size, which is ironic because Obama was ribbing him about that at the DNC, and everybody knows that this is Donald Trump's Achilles heel. So focusing on his insecurities as an individual exposes exactly why he is an unsuitable candidate for president. Because he, you know, and the rhetoric that you often hear from him is that, you know, women are not capable because they're emotionally unstable, right? Look at tonight as an example. Look how completely unstable and unhinged and insecure Donald Trump was, and how completely together, capable, and on top of everything Kamala Harris was. And it's about time America moved on from this misogynistic view of women in leadership. I mean, where I'm from, we had our female prime minister first in 1979. You know, that was a while ago. And the U.S. needs to catch up. And this year is going to be the year that changes.
Dina, as I'm sure you've heard people say in the past, maybe Donald Trump should try smiling more.
I know. His expression, you know, speaking kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier about the conspiracy theories, how he's in such an echo chamber, he doesn't even realize what he's saying is so crazy. I have to say, when he started talking about how the liberals are actually not even wanting to executing babies after they're born, and the moderator had to fact check him that executing babies after they're born is illegal throughout the country. I mean, that alone, you know, that shows to me like that bubble that he's in, because any actual voter who's undecided, you could see he is an unserious person looking for a serious job. And he, you know, that itself I thought should be disqualifying, right? Like if that exchange had happened 8 years ago or 10 years ago, that alone we would have been like, that person, you know, shouldn't be qualified to be president when you're talking about executing babies. You know, this is where his extremism is, though. And I thought she did an excellent job at pointing out his extremism, you know, just saying that word a few times. And she did an excellent job of not being diverted by his things that he was trying to throw at her. She didn't get diverted at all. Whereas he did, as you said, Anthony, he went into the crowd size and all that kind of stuff. But she didn't get diverted by that. And I thought, even though maybe she didn't make that sign, Anthony, that you had wanted her to make, her expressions, as he was talking, were fantastic. And I imagine those probably had been, you know, rehearsed a little bit too, because there was a lot of debate prep for this. Again, they didn't come across rehearsed, but she didn't need a rebut a lot of the stuff he said. She was able to focus on herself and her vision and telling the country, because she had already rebutted it with her expressions. So actually, I think those almost were maybe the best part of her debate, because the laugh, or the, you know, when she went like this, when he started talking about her father being like a Mark 6 economy, it's like she said everything she needed to say. And instead she kept it like classy and smart, and like she kept on that train. But she handled him with all those facial expressions. I thought that was fantastic.
I wanted her to write on the pad, "He's lying," and then hold it up whenever it cut to her while he was talking to take advantage. Should we not talk about Project 2025? Because this is something that came up a lot, and he flatly denied any knowledge of it. And I quote, "I've never read it. I don't know what it is." And yet it forms the entire basis of his platform. And if you look on his website, you can pretty much compare everything that he lists to Project 2025, albeit abridged and not 900 plus pages. But, you know, the evidence is completely clear. He, you know, his vice president has written the foreword to the guy's book who wrote Project 2025 and who is the head of the Heritage Foundation. So, you know, we need to be very clear about the fact that Donald Trump can deny all he likes. But I think word has got out now that Project 2025 is it's a roadmap for a dystopian future for America that is straight out of the Handmaid's Tale book. And yet he seems to think that it's the kind of thing he can just brush aside. And people are taking this very seriously. What did you guys think about whether or not he's successfully distanced himself from this publication, or whether or not people would have seen straight through it?
I think, I'm sorry, Dina, why don't you?
Oh, no, go ahead. I'll go after
I was just going to say, I think Vice President Harris did a great job nailing him down on that issue. And Project 2025 has become such a huge topic and something that people are really speaking about when you ask about this election. And Donald Trump is just so intrinsically tied to Project 2025. I mean, it's something like, what, 80% of the people or something in Project 2025 were literally his former aides and staffers. They describe it literally as the means to implement Trumpism. That's like their description of Project 2025. And you saw Donald Trump try to play this card. Well, maybe they say some good things. Maybe they say some bad things. I don't know what they say. He really wasn't saying much of anything. He was dancing around the issues. And I think Kamala Harris really got ahead of the game on Donald Trump very early on in this debate, where she basically said, tonight, across the aisle over there, you are going to hear a whole lot of lies. Mm-hmm. And then she was able to continue to go back to that. As I said, I told you were going to hear a lot of lies. That's another one. That's another one. That's another one. And it was just that endless barrage and her ability to call it out, but also not get in the mud with Donald Trump. In fact, the opposite. She was able to goad Donald Trump, to bait Donald Trump into becoming more unhinged, her getting under his skin, like when she made a flippant comment about his crowd size and Donald Trump absolutely lost. No, she has no crowd. She has no crowd. Like that was a lunacy coming from Donald Trump. And he completely took the bait there. And I think people watching that, you know, I'm not going to say all people, because we know there are at least 35% or so people, voters in this country. You know that those are folks that could be diehard Trumpers who aren't going to change their mind. But I think for those middle of the road voters, for Democrats, of course, for independents, for moderates, I think they see right through it. Dina.
Yeah, so I thought, you know, I believe him when he says he didn't read it, because again, he doesn't care about anything. He is a puppet, you know, willing to partner with anybody who will get him into power. I think that he would put aside any value. I mean, he doesn't have any values. He just wants to get into power. So fine, he may not have read it, but if you go into Project 2025, it's a public website, as Vice President Harris said. Can you believe they put it in writing? It's a public website, and it's clearly a presidential transition power plan. The whole purpose about it, hiring employees, training employees, and for the president, once they get into power, to do it. So, you know, whether or not he is, like I said, maybe how much of this is him being a puppet or not, this is happening. If he gets elected, this plan is happening. These are people who are, you know, we saw a glimmer of this actually before, you know, with the judges, right? The same group had the idea of remaking the judges into this ultra conservative makeup. And they had all these judges lined up, pre-qualified, pre-approved. And so Trump started appointing them at a speed that had never been done before. I mean, now Biden has matched that, but it had never been done. So this is that same group. And they are thinking larger, like that worked that time. And they are thinking larger, and they're getting all these employees ready. They're getting all these plans ready. And it doesn't matter how much Trump wants to do or not. That is happening if he gets elected. And I do think the Project 25, it may be confusing to people. They hear it, they don't understand it. Go to the website. If you have friends who push back and say Trump has nothing to do with it, go to the website. You know, have them go to the website. It literally talks about the presidential transition plan.
And, you know, one of the things that we try to often tell the audience here is that these policies that they try to push via methods like Project 2025, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, these are not things that they thought of yesterday or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. These have been long-term projects, 50, 60, 70 years in the making to do this. And it's one thing, if I have to give these Republicans credit, you know, they stick to these long-term plans to take away your rights. And that's why it's important that the pro-democracy community does not give up if one thing doesn't go their way. If there's one bad debate performance, for example, if you lose one election, you can't quit, because the other side, they ain't quitting. I want to show you a picture that certainly tells 1,000 words from after this debate. These are Donald Trump's debate preppers in this photo. We see Stephen Miller and we see Matt Gaetz. I would call that, I think, the walk of shame. I think you see the reactions, which says it all. Now, on a much happier note, on a much more uplifting scene, let's check in with Vice President Kamala Harris, who spoke to some supporters after tonight's historic debate.
And so we've got some work to do, because listen, I think that we think today was a good day, and it kind of was. But we have 56 days to go, and guys, we're still the underdogs in this race. It's tight. We have got to win Pennsylvania, and we are going to win Pennsylvania. And it is because of you. It is because of you who have signed up, who have volunteered. You are organizing. You're helping us to email and text and knock on doors and talk to your neighbors and your friends. And here's the thing about the spirit of our campaign. It is people-driven. It is about the people. it is about uplifting our country. This is a campaign born out of love of country. We love our country. We believe in who we are. We believe in the American people. This is a campaign about bringing folks together, knowing the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. It is about inclusion, and it is not about division, and it is not about demeaning and name-calling. It is about lifting folks up, working folks, families, children, people who are not just trying to get by, but trying to get ahead. That's what we stand for. So let's get out here for these next 56 days. Hard work is good work, and we will win. We will win.
She's getting better, isn't she? Do you, and you get the sense that as she's getting more momentum, because it's very hard being a vice president. We should remind people that it's one of the worst jobs in the world, right. and yet to be a presidential candidate where you don't have the president who you're never allowed to upstage over your shoulder all the time, you can open the taps and you can actually really kind of be who you are. And I think we're really starting to see who Kamala Harris is, and not just the shadowy figure that she's been playing over the last 3.5 years because she has to. Right. Now she's been given license, and it's wonderful to see.
Well, that was Vice President Harris. Sorry, that was Vice President Harris's statement after tonight's debate. Let's check in and see what Donald Trump was saying to people.
It destroyed our country, so I hope you're all having a good time. It was a very interesting.
Did she get under your skin, sir?
His comments there were, for those who couldn't hear it, they've destroyed our country, so I hope you're having a good time. Thank you. That's the words of Donald Trump. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance currently is on CNN, and he is repeating the debunked, they're eating your pets, they're eating your cat story. And so let's show that picture one more time for folks. Of Stephen Miller and Matt Gaetz. Once again, I think this says it all. The mood right here of the Trump campaign. They were prepping Donald Trump for this debate, apparently. Dina, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, with Anthony, she's fantastic. I mean, I think that she showed how well she is in front of the stage when she was a senator grilling Justice Kavanaugh. I mean, it was that moment, right? We all still remember that moment. I mean, she has always been good, and we're all able to finally see it. But the other important thing that she talked about was the work that needs to be done. And, the first thing we need to do is make sure we all are registered to vote, right? Check online, make sure you're registered, find out, do you have mail-in ballots? Do you have early voting? Just like make a plan early, make it fun, offer to bring your friends, your neighbors, make it an event, and volunteer. And I was talking to somebody who never had volunteered before, and they need phone banking. Most campaigns need phone banking. And if you think that's not enough of a way to help, it's a huge way to help. And the person I was talking to said, well, I don't want to be arguing with people on the phone. Usually campaigns have you call likely voters. It's more about getting out the vote. You're not going to have to argue with a Trump supporter. Usually it's really about calling the person and asking them if they've had a plan to vote, or have they already turned in the mail-in ballots, right? As it gets closer to the election. That kind of phone banking is so crucial. And you don't have to make a commitment for a certain amount of time. They train you, they make it super easy. They give you a script, and you do what you can. If we each did an hour even, it's more than they wouldn't have. So just, to kind of amplify what she was saying. This is too close of a race for somebody as bad as Trump. It is too close of a race. And it is going to take us all, doing more, let's say, than we did the last election. If you just voted the last time, great. But this time, maybe volunteer. And if you volunteered phone banking, but you didn't canvass, try the canvassing. We're going to have to kind of step it up a little bit. She needs our help. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, I don't understand, the race is still really close.
Yeah, and as Michelle Obama said during the DNC, there are going to be good days, there are going to be bad days. You know, there are going to be days where you feel great about things, which is probably right now, I would assume. There are going to be days where you don't feel as great, like maybe when the New York Times poll came out 2 days ago and everybody thought the sky was falling. But that's what happens in elections, right? You're going to get good news, you're going to get bad news. This is going to be a close race to the finish. And that's why I think that Vice President Harris frequently emphasizes we are the underdogs. Do not take anything for granted. And to Dina's note, I want to say a campaign will never make you do anything you're not comfortable with. So if you're like, I would like to get involved, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable speaking on the phone. Mm-hmm. They'll find something for you to do. They'll have you text, there will always be something for you to do. But the best thing that you could do is to take democracy into your own hands rather than let other people do the work for you. It's the most important thing. And I'd almost rather you think in that mindset on the happy days than the bad days when you're doing it, thinking that, the survival of the world depends on it. You let the good stuff encourage you as well. Don't just be motivated by fear, but be motivated by hope. I want to remind everybody, make sure that you are subscribed to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. We got our incredible panel here. We have such great shows here. Dina often does incredible legal analysis and hot takes on the most important issues of the day on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. Anthony has, what are you up to? 3 shows, 8 shows, 10 shows? Anthony's got a whole lot of shows on the MeidasTouch network.
It's 2 shows. Everyone's always on at me. It's just 2 shows.
Well, I just always want more Anthony.
You're welcome to it. Wednesdays and Sundays, yeah.
Yeah, you can catch the weekend show and Uncovered. And then Anthony also does 5-minute news, which is an incredible way to get the news every day. You can check out all the pro-democracy merch, like I said, at store.meidastouch.com. We got the childless cat lady merch. We got the prosecutor versus the criminal merch. We got the Kamala Brat t-shirts. We have the mind your own damn business Walz shirts. We got mugs. We got a whole host of merch at store.meidastouch.com. It's selling quickly. Make sure you get it now. It's all union made and made in the USA, unlike a certain orange individual who was up on stage with the way he sells all of his products. It's all union made in the USA. We support unions here. We support made in the USA. Make sure you subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast. Anywhere you get podcasts, make sure you give it a 5-star review. Anthony, what else is on your mind?
I thought I'd just mention, when we went into this debate tonight, the kind of poll of polls that 538 puts out, which is now actually owned by ABC News and not anything to do with Nate Silver anymore, was actually showing the 2 candidates neck and neck. That got updated about 2 hours ago now, and actually put Kamala Harris 2.7 points ahead of Donald Trump, with him at 44.4% and her at 47.1%. The point I would make, though, is that I don't believe the polls. They're fine to kind of use as a basic barometer. But the biggest issue that Americans are up against is the difference between the popular vote and the Electoral College. And we need to make it absolutely clear that Democrats always win the popular vote, because America as a country is a progressive, liberal, inclusive nation. But unfortunately, the voting system does not reflect that. And Republicans have only won the popular vote 1 time in all these years. And so with the Electoral College, it is a strategic game of winning in the correct districts in order to have a successful night. And so even though the polls might be showing Kamala Harris a couple of points ahead, when it comes to voting night, this is why we keep reiterating that you have to register and you have to go and use your democratic right to a vote. Because unless this is a landslide win for Kamala Harris, she needs to win the Congress and the Senate, of course, as well as the presidency. And that's when you get the ability to actually make policy change and to do the things that she really wants to do. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves in a situation where, things get blocked in the Senate again, and it's just that same exhaustive process. So in order to win the Electoral College, you have to know how to play the Electoral College. It is weighted in favor of Republicans. The history of it is a painful read and has an awful lot to do with slavery and goodness knows what else. But to get ahead of the electoral college system, which is weighted in favor of Republicans, there needs to be an absolutely huge turnout. And I should remind people that the turnout last time was only around 65%. It's not enough people.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, I think it's often worth reminding Americans of just the basic civics of the country, because I think a lot of times the frustration that people have with our government comes from a place of, why isn't XYZ getting done? Right. I think you hear that a lot with President Biden. You hear that a lot with any president, quite frankly. And it usually comes down to exactly what Anthony was just getting at, which is, well, you need the numbers elsewhere also. The president is not a dictator, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Okay. But that means that you need to get the numbers in Congress in order to pass legislation for the president to sign. That means you need to get the justices on the Supreme Court to uphold the legislation that the president signs or the initiatives that the president pushes through. It's all part of the process. That's why every election matters. That's why, quite frankly, a lot of the things that President Biden has been unable to get done are because of that. And Republicans frequently use this to their advantage, because what's their number one move? They obstruct. They purposely try to make things not work. So they say, look, the government does not work. Look, these people are not doing what they said they would do. Look, the government's horrible. Let's give all the power to the corporations because the government can't do anything. Let's give it all to the rich people. That's a coordinated strategy. They tell you the government sucks and then they prove it themselves. It doesn't have to be that way. You could actually vote for competent people. We've been now streaming for a few hours tonight. We did a pre-show. We did the debate on patreon.com/MeidasTouch exclusively for our patrons. Make sure to sign up to help continue to fuel this network. We are doing on Thursday an exclusive Zoom Q&A with myself and my brothers, the co-founders of MeidasTouch. We'll take your questions. We'll meet you. We are excited for that. But just like in the debate, they gave the two candidates final statements. I want to turn it over to Miss Gina Dahl for final statements on this historic night.
I mean, yeah, the debate itself, as we've talked about, I think Vice President Harris clearly won. She did everything she needed to do. If people really, truly could not be convinced to vote for her after this, she did a fantastic job, and she can continue from this to keep on campaigning. And to the point about the election, we do need it to be a landslide. We need it to be a landslide. President Biden won quite a bit by the Electoral College. That actually wasn't even close, even if there was close in terms of the number of votes in the different states. But it wasn't close with the popular vote, wasn't close with electoral count. But we need to win by a landslide because the Trump and the MAGAs are already seeding doubts of the authenticity of our elections. And we see that with the Georgia Election Board, what they are doing there to try to stop the certification of the vote in the counties. And, there's going to be a lot of this going on. We cannot let this election come down to one state. We can't let it come down to one county. Obviously, Trump thinks that Georgia is going to be a significant state, and they're putting a lot of efforts there to really disenfranchise the votes by having people vote and yet not be certified. So we have to have this be a landslide. We cannot have it come down to Georgia. And we also need to have it be a landslide because we need MAGA movement to end once and for all. Trump is a loser. He may not like it, but he is. He has lost. He's never won the popular election. He barely won the Electoral College in 2016. He lost in 2020. The people he endorsed in the 22 midterm lost. He loses over and over. And for some reason, the GOP isn't willing to break up with him, even if the rest of the American public is. So he needs to win by a lot to really end this movement once and for all.
I agree. It's got to be undeniable. And, there are certain things that extend beyond politics. Like these shouldn't be political issues. And there was a point that I was, making on the MeidasTouch podcast, Dina, which was that, of course, policy is important, but this election is about so much more than policy. It's about the fabric of our democracy. And it's why you see people ranging from Senator Bernie Sanders to former Vice President Dick Cheney supporting Vice President Kamala Harris. It's not because they agree on policy, but it's because they agree on the United States of America and the existence of the United States of America. Anthony, final statements.
I thought it was very interesting that Donald Trump was prepared to go back to this whole story that he actually won the election and Joe Biden didn't. I actually gasped for a moment. I was like, really? You're still going to run that one here, nearly 4 years after that election? And to me, that was an example of quite how unwell he is. And I hope that people watching at home who recognize that the election was not stolen, they know about the 60 court cases, they know that they were all thrown out because Trump did not have an argument in this case. We know about the extra counts that went on. We know about Fox being sued by Dominion voting systems. I mean, so many things happened after that election to double down on the safety and security of a fair and free election going forward. Dina's right. He is going to claim, if he loses, that it's a fraudulent election. And it's going to sound like it did back in 2020. And it'll be like history repeating itself. I fear that we will see another type of insurrection. And I think this time the plan is more about the Project 2025 people, i.e. the Heritage Foundation and these fake legislatures or people who are election deniers working in these legislatures who refuse to certify the election. They can't really do that legally, but it's not going to stop Trump from forcing them to do it and for them to at least try to slow down the process. So I'm hoping we have an inauguration in January on time with Kamala Harris, and I'm sure that will happen. But to get there, it relies on everybody doing their bit, whether it's not just voting, but actually campaigning and getting the word out, because you can see that Donald Trump is not going to relent when it comes to the lies, the propaganda, the hate speech, the negativity, and this constant narrative of America being a nation in decline. It isn't. Just look around. I mean, he claims San Francisco is a disaster. I'm going there on vacation in a couple of days' time because it is literally one of the most beautiful places in America. And I really think that the American people are smarter, a whole lot smarter than Donald Trump. So I don't think that this constant whining is going to be the winning ticket for him.
And just like I was speaking about the Republican obstructionism, it's part of Donald Trump's strategy too, right? Tell you that America is horrible, tell you that everything sucks, tell you that your life sucks, and that he is the only one who could fix it. It's a typical authoritarian tactic. But I think people are looking around and they're saying, you know what, things are actually pretty good. I don't see this dystopian American carnage view of America that Donald Trump is presenting. We got MeidasTouch co-founder and my brother, of course, Ben Meiselas, back with us. Ben, we were just signing off. Final statements. I know you've been in the lab, or in the kitchen, shall I say, cooking up some videos, which we just released. If you want to see right now, Ben just launched a full recap of the debate. You could see all the highlights right now. It's the latest video on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. And of course, make sure that you are subscribed. Ben, do you have any final words or anything to add now that you are back after doing your various hot
I was so honored to be able to watch this debate with our incredible panelists and each and every one of you watching and listening out there. The Meidas Mighty community, I think, is one of the biggest forces today, not just in politics, but in just being kind of decent, fact-loving human beings. There was that clip that I saw circulating where they were asking these individuals who they were going to vote for, and one was Republican, and she was like, the reason I'm going to vote for Vice President Kamala Harris is because she acts like a human. And it was such a funny and basic statement to make, but in many ways the MeidasTouch network was kind of built out of the WTF or WTH, what, do you all see? That's kind of crazy, right? Hello. And we were all being gaslit by corporate media, by the system that was created. And so where we can all join together and move forward a new way of consuming news and information that's data-driven and fact-based and focused on these values and enduring principles rather than just the horse race of like of politics, but like, whoa, what are we talking about here? That's kind of not normal. And like, that's also mean and racist and hateful and lies. And wait a minute, this is intelligent and smart and truthful. And we could live in a fact-based way and we could uplift each other. There was just so much of that in Vice President Kamala Harris's presentation. Not only was she able to kind of bait Donald Trump, deliver her policies, but then she was actually able to pivot. And it's hard to do all of these at once, which is why her performance was so brilliant, to then drive home that theme of joy and let's move forward. And that means let's support each other. Let's not beat each other down. Let's bring people up. I mean, Donald Trump and this MAGA movement is all about bullying marginalized communities and name calling and mocking. And that shouldn't be the identity of any major American political party. That should just be rejected behavior. I often say the way Donald Trump behaves is exactly the way we would not want our kids to behave. It's everything we teach our kids not to be, every aspect of it. So why would we ever want to embrace that for the most important position ever, potentially in the world, of all mankind in history? Like, why is that the case? And so we here at the MeidasTouch Network take a very principled, value-based, but sometimes very simple and very basic. I like to understand things simply. I don't like to hear all of the big words and abstractions. I just give me the information as I say. And so my closing thoughts is that I think the American voters have the information if you watch that debate. And I think they have the data. And I think, Vice President Kamala Harris has challenged him to another debate. That would be great. Who knows if Donald Trump will show up again after that. He's doing his propaganda tour now on Fox, claiming that he won, even though it was just like the most awful thing. Even like Lindsey Graham can't spin it in the spin room. He's like, yeah, that was bad. He needs to fire his whole debate prep team. And so we all know what it is that just happened, and I think what the pro-democracy community always needs to be tethered to is the facts and reality, and focused on those values and principles first and foremost. And so our commitment to all of you is that's what we're going to continue to build here. Are we going to make mistakes along the road? Sure, we're human. We're going to, and when we do, we're going to try to get better and we're going to improve. But we're going to build this together every step of the way. We listen to your voice. We hear you. We felt that need for a fact-based, not both sidesism network. We're going to build this thing together. As I mentioned before, we don't have outside investors on the MeidasTouch network, which, if you think about that and how our digital platforms compare to Fox and CNN and MSNBC, there's a reason they don't let us stream it, because they're afraid of us, because they know we're growing bigger than them. We get about 20 to 30 million people viewing us every 48 hours. That's more than Fox. It's more than CNN. That's more than MSNBC. That's more than those platforms, and they're scared and they're worried about that. So they try to exclude us from that, which is fine. We don't need them. All we need is you, the Meidas Mighty. And the best way you can help is just share this network with people. Of course, I'm going to want to pitch you on Patreon because I want to try to help grow our resources so we can expand on our editorial team. Like Ron Filipkowski, our editor-in-chief, posted the childless cat lady video immediately. The way our team's been working, we've been breaking, you all know this, the biggest political stories of this cycle. Our editorial team has been breaking, and that's thanks to you. But before making my Patreon pitch, I just want to thank you. You don't have to do anything at all, period, full stop. The best thing you can do, just watch and be a part of this community. Spread love, spread joy, tell people to register to vote. That's all we care about, first and foremost. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure people who can vote in America are registered to vote. But if you can join our Patreon, that would be great. We do bonus features. We're going to do exclusive videos. We do exclusive videos there. And I thought that was a pretty cool experience today, watching that with all of our patrons when we tried to get excluded from the corporate media club. It's fine. You could exclude us. We'll just keep growing in our own way. So patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Let's grow together. There's different tiers. There's honorary producers where your name appears at the end of the MeidasTouch podcast shows. There's other tiers where you get to meet Brett, me, and Jordy. We're going to do one of those meetings soon, although as you may know, I'm on baby watch. So any day we could be having a baby girl, my wife and I. So you may not see me for a few days and you'll know where I will be. But patreon.com/MeidasTouch is the way to kind of help grow this financially. Also, those emojis that you see floating around there, as I always say, it's an interesting business model we have going with emojis, but it's working. You know, we don't have the deca billionaire and billionaire shareholders and investors that Fox and MSNBC does, but you know what? Why do we need that? We've got you, the Meidas Mighty. So get those emojis, share those emojis. We have fun with the emojis. We have a lot of great pro-democracy sponsors that sponsor the shows. They help grow this platform as well. And look, I saw the speech that Vice President Kamala Harris gave after the debate where she said, look, we're still the underdog. She said it was a good night, but let's not rest on our laurels. We need to work every day. We got 56 days, and we got to work for our democracy each and every day. And we can't take any of this for granted at all. We won't here at the MeidasTouch Network. So again, thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. I want to thank, you got Anthony, you got Dina, you got Brett, you had Popak here holding it down for all of us. I truly think also, and Dina and Anthony, as you're here, I'll tell you, we have the most talented hosts anywhere. I will put our hosts against anyone, anywhere, anytime on the MeidasTouch Network. And so thank you for all the hard work that you do, Anthony and Dina and Popak's not here, and Brett and Jordy and the team behind the team too that you don't see. You got Salty, you've got Jeremy, you got Sydney, you've got Hayden, you've got our editorial team, JD Wolf, who we call Wolfie. You got Ron Filipkowski. You got Aaron Parnas. You got a whole. I'm gonna forget people's names, but you've got everybody there who's working really, really hard. And if I left your names out, there's so many hosts and correspondents and writers. And I want to just thank, every single person from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, Meidas Mighty. One more time, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. I was yapping for a long time there, but I was feeling it. We have new videos that are loading right now. So go and check the feed. That's all I got to say, other than shout out to the Meidas Mighty. Let's protect, defend, and support our democracy. Have a great night, everybody.
So this is really who Donald Trump chose as his running mate?
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him. I never liked him. I never liked racism. I'm a never Trump guy. Xenophobia. I'm a never Trump guy. Racism. I'm a never Trump guy. Xenophobia. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him.
Standing strong against the fascists, we sing our song. We will get it. treason. There's no two sides to hate. We will look for the silver lining in the darkest clouds. But remember, truth is golden. So come on and sing it loud. The mighty standing strong. Against the fascists we sing our song. We will get it right whenever they go wrong. The mighty standing strong. The radicals won't stand a chance. We'll just shout it down. Inspire a generation to rise up and vote them out. We will look for the silver lining in the darkest clouds. But remember, truth is golden. So come on and sing it loud. The mighty standing strong. The mighty standing strong. We will get it right whenever they go wrong. The mighty standing strong. The mighty standing strong. The mighty standing strong. Thank you.